in time. If someone enters, that Polumi will take care of that.
Okay,
but I
yes,
think Polumi, you should keep one in your hand. I don't
Yes,
know
ma'am.
what is the procedure. Maybe that sir will join, so you have to think about that. And if it is possible that someone should leave and sir can join, that is different thing. I don't know. I don't have idea about this thing, but you think over. And
Okay, ma'am.
just let somebody to join. Okay.
Okay,
So,
ma'am.
Tonu, please, Gopa, Umradha. So, shall we start? Hello? Gopa?
Yes.
Gopa?
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Tonu will start.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, so it's 11 sharp and I would like to begin our today's webinar. A warm good morning to our efficient faculty members, guests, colleagues, and all the participants. We, the students of MSc Nursing students, final year students of West Bengal Government College of Nursing, SSKM Hospital, are very pleased to organize a webinar on the current global health issue, that is COVID-19. I, Sarangthem Tanu Devi, the host of today's webinar, warmly welcome everyone in this participation. The outbreak of this virus has cruelly affected millions of people in the world to such a great extent. And in such a situation, we, the nurses, we play a vital role in the health team to protect and combat the disease. We are very thankful to our principal, madam, and teachers for giving us this opportunity to conduct such a webinar. So, to begin with, I would like to introduce our Madam Vishnupriya Vishwas, Principal, West Bengal Government College of Nursing. She has been the backbone of our webinar and has supported us.
Thank you.
I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you very much to have this opportunity to speak and to join your webinar.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, for today, moderators will be Madam Gopa Roy, Professor, West Bengal Government College of Nursing, and Madam Anuradha Mukherjee, Senior Lecturer, West Bengal Government College of Nursing. We are very thankful to all our teachers for being a part of us and helping us throughout. I welcome you, ma'am. We are also thankful to have with us. Thank you, ma'am. We are also thankful to have with us Dr. Saibal Banerjee, ADHD, Department of Health and Family Welfare, Government of West Bengal, Shastra Bhavan, to be the guest speaker in the webinar. The sir has not joined us presently, but he will be with us in short time. So we will wait for him until then. Then there will be 6 speakers from the final year MSc Nursing students who will be covering the all aspects of the topic. So to begin with the session, no waste of time.
Please, everyone, mute yourself.
Everyone, please mute your speakers. Is it audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Now it is audible now.
Okay, ma'am. So there are total 6 speakers from the final year students who will be covering all the aspects of the topic today. And with no waste of time, Vishnupriya Vishwas to give us a welcome address. Ma'am, please.
Actually, COVID-19, this pandemic situation, this global pandemic taught us so many things. Before 4 or 5 months or so, we never have thought that we'll have this discussion. Even that term web cleaner, I didn't heard. I don't know how many of you have this term with you, but whenever it first came, this INC, in the INC webinar, so I was asking Gopa madam, Umrata madam, and those who were at the
करो ना
and these online classes and so on. Actually, I don't want to say anything about this COVID-19 disease itself because there will be a discussion on that. So only I want to share my ideas that really there is a qualitative change in the human life and as well as in our life also. So, really a mesmerizing experience and a delightful experience for me to join to your webinar. So, yesterday also I had a webinar where I had to speak, but there were lots of problems from the early morning. That was the media was that Cisco Webex. So this communicated, they were not, I was not audible to them. So that there was a problem, but today at least Google Meet and Zoom, we are very little bit of, what should I say, little bit of familiar and we feel comfortable with these two, this our medium of this our program. So my heartiest welcome to all of you. We have joined here. And some of the people, they might be in the queue, they are not able to join because of this limited space of this webinar. So I think they have, our students have arranged so many things for them. They have arranged the YouTube connection and all those things. So I think they will see the live situation also. So welcome again, welcome, my heartfelt welcome to all of you. Really, I'm just feeling a little bit different today that we are also going to arrange this webinar. And actually, so many days I was thinking what to do, because you have got to do one, under the staff development program. It is a management issue from the management subject. You have to do one staff development program. So I was thinking what to do and how to conduct it. So suddenly I was discussing with Gopa Madam, and Gopa Madam told me that we can do this. So I was thinking, yes, really it is the experience for our student and for us also. So let me have this. So thank you all your organizers, the MSc second year student, to have this lively experience. Thank you once again and welcome, my heartfelt welcome to all of the students who have been teachers, who have joined, and those who are waiting. They could not join, but they will have the YouTube link. Please again, and I request you to start the session.
Much, ma'am, for your humble to all of us. Yes, we are grateful. The MSc final year, even at the last moment, we are grateful that you have given us the opportunity to conduct such webinars. So we are also very fortunate enough that we have Google Meet, also Zoom, that we are able to connect even at this situation. Because we are able to help each other and also connect each other. We are also with that. So before I begin with the session, I would like to request all kindly their speakers during the whole session, and so that this interruption can be avoided. So everyone, please mute your speakers till the end of the session. So if there is any doubt, you may ask questions in the chat box which is given below the screen itself. So at the end of the session, those questions will be discussed in the open forum with the speakers and also with ushers. So please mute until the end of session. And for our live stream, we until now we are not able to connect live stream, but that we will be giving the videos in the group. So for those who are not able to participate, it will be giving the videos in the group itself. So those who are able to participate, please have a time with us and listen to us properly. And one more thing, so at the end of the session, we'll be giving a feedback to the group itself, the participants. So everyone, please listen carefully. Please fill out the feedback form and submit it in the group by day itself so that we can get feedback from all and we can correct others with the mistake we have done. So what should begin with the session. So I do hand over to the our first moderator for the session. So over to you, ma'am. Is it audible?
Your voice is breaking, Tanu.
Tanu, you are not audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, ma'am.
You are audible.
Yes.
So shall I start
Gopa
with
has handed over to Gopal.
Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am.
Okay, good morning everybody. So thank you. First of all, I must appreciate our second year student to arrange such a wonderful webinar on the current scenario, pandemic scenario. COVID-19, at present, COVID-19, we know about COVID-19. So COVID-19, WHO has already been declared COVID-19 as a pandemic disease, as because it has processed almost 200 countries all over the world, and from 9 to 90 years of people almost know about COVID-19. So as a health professional, we must have a little bit of knowledge regarding the COVID-19 infection. What is the positive organism of COVID-19 infection? Why it is so named? So that should among the healthcare professionals, especially the students. What now I am calling Olu Pramanik, our second year students, as a first speaker to discuss on history, concept, definition, organism involved for COVID-19 infection, and your time, you will get 15 minutes time. So now your time starts.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me the opportunity to explain about the history, concept, definition, and organism involved in COVID-19. So let's proceed. Coming to the course of pandemic. A novel coronavirus outbreak was first documented in Wuhan, Hubei province, China in December 2019. It has now been confirmed on 6 continents and in more than 100 countries. That is why it is called a pandemic. On 11th March 2020, WHO declared novel coronavirus disease or COVID-19 outbreak as a pandemic and public health emergency of international concern. India is at peak of being detected with large number of cases has been referred to as cluster of cases by WHO. Cluster of cases means it is located in a particular region, and it is explained as if in term of imported cases, local transmission and community transmission. And what community transmission is? It occurs when there is no clear source of origin of insertion or in a country. That means insertion of the infection in the country. Next, coming to the history of coronavirus outbreak. The first coronavirus, that is SARS-CoV infection disease, that is called severe acute respiratory syndrome, occurred in 2002, and it affected around 8,098 people from 17 countries. Total number of deaths recorded were 744. The next is MERS-CoV-2, which causes Middle East respiratory syndrome and this disease was first reported in 2012. The total cases of MERS-CoV were more than 2,500 across 21 countries, and total deaths were 860 approximately. And the latest one is COVID-19, and the organism causing it is SARS-CoV-2, and newly case is reported on daily basis till now. Next, coming to the current Indian and global scenario. Globally, the number of cumulative cases of COVID-19 is 18 crore 1,42,718. Newly cases reported were in last 24 hours 2,19,862. Death cumulative total are 6,91,013. Death newly reported in last 24 hours are 4,278. USA is the top or the first position globally in number of COVID-19 cases, and India ranks third globally for the more infected people in the world. Other mostly infected countries are Brazil, which is in second position, Russian Federation, Iran, UK, Spain, Pakistan, etc. We also can see that mode of transmission in India is the cluster of cases, not the community transmission, which is prominent in USA. Cluster of cases means that I have already explained that there is no people to people, no evidence of most cases which are getting infected from another people, but there is most evidences against people getting infected from a person who is imported from other country. Next, coming to the first confirmed case in India, which was reported in Thrissur district, Kerala on 30th January 2020. And India ranks third in the world, just behind Brazil and US. Next, coming to the concept about the disease and the virus. Naming of coronavirus disease and the virus that causes it. As I have already said that name of the disease is coronavirus disease or COVID-19, and name of the virus is severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 or SARS-CoV-2. There is a little history behind it. When the virus was first detected, it was named as Wuhan virus, as the first case was reported from the Wuhan, China. Then it was named as novel coronavirus or nCoV-19, because this new type of coronavirus was first detected in the year 2019. And next it was officially named as SARS-CoV-2 or severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 by International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses, ICTV, and they declared it as SARS-CoV-2 on 11th February 2020. Next, coming to the definition of COVID-19, coronavirus disease is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus as announced by World Health Organization. We all know that most people infected with COVID-19 experience mild to moderate respiratory illness and recover without requiring any special treatment. And the people with comorbidities like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, hypertension, renal diseases can have the fatal form of this kind of disease. Next, what are coronaviruses? Coronaviruses are a large family of zoonotic virus, cause illness ranging from the common cold to severe respiratory disease. There are several coronaviruses known to be circulating in different animal population that have not yet infected humans, like dogs, cats, civet cats, etc. Next, COVID-19 is the most recent to make the jump to human infection. Next, coming to the classification of coronavirus. These viruses are broadly classified into 4 genus. They are alpha coronavirus, beta coronavirus, gamma coronavirus, and delta coronavirus. The most dangerous forms such as MERS, SARS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 belongs to genus Beta coronavirus. Next, coming to the virus structure, the name of coronavirus is derived from the Latin word corona, which means crown or wreath. Coronaviridae is a family of enveloped single-stranded RNA virus which infects amphibians, birds, and mammals. They have characteristic club-shaped spikes that project from their surface, which in electron micrographs create an image reminiscent of the solar corona from which their name is derived. The virus envelope consists of three kinds of protein. They are membrane protein, envelope protein, and spike protein. And it is covered by a lipid bilayer. The average diameter of SARS-CoV-2 virus particle is around 125 nanometer. This is the structural diagram of SARS-CoV-2. You can see this is the envelope protein, this is the membrane protein, this is the spike protein, this is the nucleoplastid protein which enclose the RNA, and this is the lipid bilayer membrane. Next is some virology facts about SARS-CoV-2. When a person is infected with SARS-CoV-2, antibody response or seroconversion antibody occurs in blood within 10 to 20 days of getting infected. And according to various studies, the virus environmental stability in terms of half-life is 1 hour in aerosol and 1 to 10 hours in surfaces. The surface stability depends upon the kind of surface such as glass, metal, plastic, etc. Next, characteristics of infection progression in a patient. When one patient is infected with the virus, there is 99% of the people remains asymptomatic for less than equal to 14 days. And the incubation period is 5 days. And after getting exposed to the virus, the virus remains in latent period for 3 days. And if the person is tested before 3 days, there is a highest chance of getting the result as -1. Then when the person proceeds towards the infectious phase, the interval of half maximum infectiousness is equal to 4 days. That means the person remains highly infectious for next 4 days. And diagnosis is preferred after 5 days. And in this period, the person remains symptomatic. In humans, the virus causes respiratory infection, including the common cold, which are typically mild, though rarer forms such as SARS, including the one causing COVID-19 and MERS, can be lethal. This is the electron microscopic view of SARS-CoV-2 infected cells. These yellow spherical dots are the viruses. Thank you so much. Now I request Professor Gopa Roy to take over the session again. Thank you.
পৌলমি মিউট করে দে তোর ইয়েটা।
Excuse me, Porumi, you have
Yes.
stopped the slide, right?
Yes, I have stopped.
Don't get late.
Yes, ma'am. Una Laila, are you there? Excuse me?
Yes,
Una
yes.
Laila, ready?
Yes. Thank you, Tanu. Very good morning to all dignitaries, colleagues, and participants. Today's theme is
coming.
Yes. Pandemic
Yes.
COVID-19 novel coronavirus. In present situation, outbreak of COVID-19 is a burning issue all over the world. Coronavirus disease is more dominating in the lives of everyone, physically and psychologically, and whole world is combating against this pandemic situation. So it is very important to know about coronavirus, its prevention and treatment strategy for combating with this situation and providing proper quality care. So today's topic is very much important for us.
Thank you, ma'am, for this opportunity. I will discuss about the transmissions, pathophysiology, signs, symptoms, and grading of the COVID-19. So, COVID-19 transmitted from direct contact or close contact and indirect contact. How person to person transmitted? Close contact within 1 meter of infected person. Infective respiratory droplets during the coughing, sneezing, it can be transmitted. And it indirectly transmitted from fomites to persons. Contaminated objects and surface around the person such as tables, doorknobs, handrails, stethoscope or thermometer can be transmitted the virus. And airborne or aerosol transmissions, aerosol mainly generated during the medical procedures, mainly respiratory procedures in the hospital settings. And what are the procedures can generate the aerosols? Like endotracheal intubations, bronchoscopy, open suctioning, administration of nebulizations, manual ventilations before intubations, turning the patients to the prone positions, disconnecting the patient from the ventilator, non-invasive positive pressure ventilation, tracheostomy, and cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Then what are the difference of droplet and aerosol? Droplet creates during the coughing and sneezing, and it can be spread less than 6 feet, and its diameter of droplets is more than 5 microns, and droplets contain 99.9% of viruses. And aerosol or airborne teeny particles possibly produced during the talking and the medical procedures or respiratory procedures are suspended in the air for longer time, and one study suggests that the aerosols, the survival rate of virus in aerosol is 3 hours, and another study suggests that the survival rate of virus in aerosol more than 16 hours. So this is under research. And diameter of aerosol is less than 5 microns. And others, route of transmissions, fecal-oral route, still under research. One study support that the presence of virus in the urine, and another 3 study suggest that presence of virus in stool. And in BJ Medical College and Hospital, Pune, detected one confirmation case of vertical transmissions, but all those route of transmission is under research. So now we will see one video how the virus transmitted through droplet, through aerosols, and it becomes the pandemic. Let's see the video. So like that way, the virus becomes the pandemic. So now I will discuss about the pathophysiology of COVID-19. So COVID-19 having the affinity to attack the ACE2 shell. ACE2 shells is the cells present in the all endothelial layers in our body, mainly the major vital organs vessels. ACE2 shells is angiotensin converting 2 shells. Its functions is to block the angiotensin 2's functions. The angiotensin 2 having the functions to constrict the blood vessels and narrowing the blood vessels and damage the blood vessels, which leads to the damage the organs. And ACE2 shells blocking the function of angiotensin 2. The virus having the affinity to attack these ACE2 shells and replicates, and when the virus is replicating, the functions capacity of ACE2 shells is decreases, and then the activation of angiotensin 2 function is increased, so that leads to acute lungs injury, adverse myocardial remodeling, vasoconstrictions, vascular permeability. Now see how the COVID-19 affects our organ. COVID-19 affect the ACE2 shells, mainly the vessels of lungs, heart, GI tract, biliary tract, and which creates the cytokine storm. Cytokine is the immune response or immune mediator which activates to fight against the viruses, and it secretes large amount. This condition is known as cytokine storm. Cytokine helps to activate the inflammatory mediators like the endothelial cell, platelets, leukocytes, monocytes, phagocytes, which are activated. And when the inflammatory mediators are activated, their local and systemic inflammatory response started, and which leads to sepsis and septic shock. And due to inflammatory response, all blood drifts to the inflammatory sites, and the major vital organs deprived from the blood supply. So there is the decrease of blood flow to the vital organ, which leads to hypercoagulability, endotheliopathy, and decrease the tissue perfusion, hypoxia. And hypoxia leads to anaerobic metabolism, which produce huge amount of lactic acid, and due to the acid productions, the vital organ are damaged gradually. And due to hypercoagulability, there are microthrombosis and macrothrombosis created. And due to macrothrombosis, large artery of vital organs like pulmonary embolism, acute renal failure, cardiac failure develops. And due to microthrombosis, ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndromes, which leads to the fibrosis of the lungs tissue, and lungs means the alveolar tissue cannot take parts in the ventilation perfusion, so there is severe ventilation perfusion mismatch, and vasculopathy and disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, which leads the multi-organ dysfunction and ultimately death. So what are the sign symptoms of COVID-19? 88% case suggest the fever, low-grade fevers, 68% having the dry cough, and when the gradually disease is progressed, so mucus production in case of 33%, and shortness of breath 19%, fatigue 38%, sore throat 15%, and muscle pain 15%. Most common symptoms: fever, dry cough, tiredness. Less common symptoms: aches and pains, sore throat, diarrhea, conjunctivitis, headache, loss of taste or smell, a rash on skin and discoloration of finger or toes. And serious symptoms: difficulty breathing, sore throat of breathing, shortness of breathing, chest pain or pressures, and loss of speech or movements. Primary symptoms of COVID-19: fever, cough, body aches, running nose, shortness of breath, sore throat, loss of sensation, sense of smell, and loss of sense of taste. And grading according to the clinical severity, there are 88% case represent the asymptomatic, mild or moderate symptom, and 15% case goes to severe, and the 5% only critical case. Asymptomatic case and mild case can be treated in home isolations, and moderate case can be treated in the COVID center, and severe and critical care case need to the hospital, special hospitals care. Asymptomatic case, how we can differentiate? Clinical manifestation means absence of typical and atypical clinical manifestations. Image findings, no change in CT and X-ray scan, and other positive test COVID positive. And mild clinical manifestations, typical fever, dry cough, sore throat, running nose, sneezing, fatigue, malaise, tiredness, muscle aches, headache, loss of smell. And atypical, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain. Image findings, usually no change in CT and X-ray, and others findings, absence of any manifestations of pneumonia. In moderate case, clinical manifestations, presence of symptoms of pneumonia, fever, usually persistent, and fever more than 37.8 degrees centigrade with a dry cough. Image findings, usually the presence of ground glass opacity, lungs consolidations, and other crackles or wheeze during the pulmonary auscultation. Severe case, clinical manifestations, dyspnea, hypoxia, more than 50% lungs involvement, diarrhea, vomiting, and nausea. Image findings, ground glass opacity, lungs consolidation, pleural effusion, lymphadenopathy, and others, continually worsening the clinical outcomes of patients. Critical clinical manifestations, severe difficulty in breathing and shortness of breath, chest pain, movement impairments, loss of speech. Image findings, ground glass opacity, usually bilateral lungs consolidation, pulmonary nodules, and others findings clinically worsening the clinical outcomes of patient. Most prevalent complications are acute respiratory distress syndrome or respiratory failure, myocardial injury, arrhythmia, or heart failure, acute kidney injury, acute liver injury, encephalopathy, disseminated intravascular coagulation, rhabdomyolysis, which means the excessive destruction of the muscles, septic shocks, or multiple organ dysfunction. How we can grade adult and child? For mild cases, adult and child's symptoms are same, mild symptomatics, and no evidence of pneumonia and hypoxia. In moderate cases, adults having the clinical sign of pneumonia like febrile cough, dyspnea, tachypnea, saturation more than 90% in room air. And for child, clinical sign of non-severe pneumonia, cough or dyspnea plus tachypnea with or without recession. And in severe cases, adult sign of pneumonia and along with the other signs like respiratory rate more than 30 breaths per minute, severe respiratory distress, saturation less than 90% in room air. And for child, signs of pneumonia and any of other symptoms like central cyanosis, saturations less than 90% in room air, severe respiratory distress, that is grunting, severe recession, and any red flag means the danger signs like the inability to take oral intake, breastfeed, lethargy, loss of consciousness, seizure, tachypnea. Tachypnea, if the baby's age is less than 2 months, so more than 60 breaths per minute, 2 to 11 months more than 50 breaths per minute, and 1 to 5 years more than 40 breaths per minute. And for critical case, and adult and child's representing same sign symptoms like ARDS, sepsis, and septic shocks. And how we can differentiate the common cold, flu, allergy, and COVID-19. Fever for common cold, rare. In flu, 100 to 102 degree Fahrenheit, and that lasts for 3 to 4 days. And in allergy case, never fever seen. And in COVID-19, it is common, mainly low-grade fever. Headache, rare in cold, flu intense, and allergy uncommon, and COVID-19 can be present. And general aches and pains, slight, and usual and often severe in flu, never, and can be presented in COVID. And fatigue and weakness, mild in cold and intense, can last up to 2 to 3 weeks, and sometimes in allergy, and can be present. And extreme exhaustion in cold, never, usual started in the early phase of flu, and in allergy never seen, and in COVID can be present. Stuffy and running nose, common in cold and sometimes in flu, and common in allergy, and in COVID-19 has been reported. Sneezing usually present in cold and allergy and in flu sometimes, and COVID-19 has been reported. And sore throat common in flu and cold and allergy sometimes, and COVID-19 has been reported. Cough mild to moderate common can become severe in flu and in allergy sometimes presents in COVID-19 common. Shortness of breath rare in common cold and flu and in allergy rare, but if patients having the asthmatic attack, that's time the shortness of breath can be present. And in COVID-19 in more serious case it should be present. In loss of smell and taste sometimes in cold and flu and never in allergy, and in COVID-19 has been reported. But all sign symptoms is under research for COVID-19. That is not well established, because means the COVID-19 day by day change their property and the sign symptoms is changed. So that's why this is under research till now. So thank you everyone. Thank you ma'am.
Has been taken is the containment measure to break the chain of transmission, as we all do. This is the to combat any pandemic in the world. Number one. Number two is that, as Professor has just told in his remark of the previous speaker, to disease transmission from one person to another. That is how it works. The government from the beginning started isolation. As you all know, there are 4 levels of COVID hospitals. Level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 initially. But as of now, only the persons who are COVID positive tested, they are admitted in the hospitals. So COVID testing by RT-PCR, that is the clinical sign of the diagnosis of COVID disease, has to be there for a patient to be admitted in a COVID treatment center. Then comes, as was conceptualized in the initial days, safe home concept. The safe home concept is for those persons who are COVID positive but asymptomatic or mild symptomatic, mild to very less moderate symptomatic persons. They can be treated at their home setting, provided there are some conditions like complete isolation of the self and from the family members. Number 2, complete care of the patients under the supervision of a healthcare provider person. If these provisions are not met, the government has arranged many numbers of safe home centers. There will be treatment facilities, there will be healthcare workers, there will be oxygen therapy system. Only when a person's admitted or they are in a safe home, they can be transferred to the designated COVID hospitals. So level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, which are previously based on symptoms, and subsequently on COVID test has been done as a bit. Number 2, the government has taken up most private health centers, healthcare sectors for COVID treatment. There are centers as well for the big hospitals, corporate hospitals, I mean to say. Satellite centers are coming up day by day as the demand is increasing day by day. That is quite natural. And as we all know, as the viral disease, vaccine is yet to come up. And the vaccine is very difficult to come up because of the fact, as of now, 11 strains of coronavirus have been identified. And 4 of those 11 strains are very, very dangerous, very, very virulent. 7 strains are not that. Patients who are attacked with the 4 types of coronavirus strains mostly are being faced with complications. Even if they are treated fully and get cured, they have the residual symptoms. Other seven varieties of strains are not producing that much virulent type of pathology in the lungs, kidney, brain, or heart, amongst others. So, keeping that in mind, our job is to strengthen the hands of the Department of Health and Family Welfare, because we, as the nursing professionals, the doctors, the other healthcare professionals, are mostly at risk of contracting the disease. I must say, with your permission, of course, self-protection is the most important for all of us. And what is that self-protection? To minimize the chances of getting infected from the others. They may be patients, they may be symptomatic, they may not be symptomatic, who are positive, we don't know unless they are tested. So self-protection, if various methods we may discuss in other forums as well, that is most important, because I have seen nursing staff and doctors, treating doctors, who have contracted the disease because of a repeated small exposure to the coronavirus in their healthcare setting, notwithstanding their use of PP or other things. So that has to be kept in mind, because you never know. And a blinking of an eye, you will get that virus infection. It depends on the load of the virus that is being transported. It may be through one chance, it may be through multiple chances or occurrences. So that's very vital. We should never touch our eyes, nose, and mouth empty with their hands unless it is properly sanitized or cleaned with soap and water. The best is soap and water. Sanitization is for the frequent small use of it already clean hand every time. So soap water is the most important thing. We should wash our face, mouth, nose, everything with soap water. Because you cannot sanitize your intranostril area or intraocular area or intraoral area with sanitizer. You shouldn't, you cannot. Number 3 point is that becomes your satellite centers. Satellite centers are basically for the corporate hospitals within 2 kilometers of those corporate hospitals, big private hospitals, where patients are not getting the chance to be admitted. They can be admitted in different hotels or centers that have been earmarked by those hospitals. They can be admitted over there under their direct supervision by their own staff and their gadgets. And in case of it, and subject to the available bed, those persons can be shifted to the main hospitals. That is the concept of satellite centers in our state of West Bengal. Now, the important factor, as you already know, is QSOFA. That is sequential organ failure system. This is in a very advanced stage. I must take the opportunity to discuss this thing. As I've already discussed, there are 3 criteria. You put the Glasgow Coma Scale. If it is less than 15, the score is 1. The maximum point is 15. We have to score 15 out of 15. The patient has to score 0. Otherwise, his score is 1, and this score is not good. Number 1. Number 2, there are blood pressure, systolic blood pressure. If it is more or equal to 100, score is another 1. And there is obviously the respiratory rate. If it is more than or equal to 22, score of 1 is awarded. If the score is 1, it's okay. If 2 or more, the patient is severely affected, needs to be treated in a high care unit. That is the sequential organ failure system. I must discuss how this virus, after gaining entry into the lungs, multiplies and damages the lungs. It is experienced directly in the Calcutta hospital center. One of my friends is suffering over there. And ECMO is being instituted for many of the patients in the corporate. This ECMO is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation when the lungs is so severely damaged. The normal gaseous exchange between the lung alveoli and the endothelium of the blood blood vessels cannot take place. So that thing has to be taken over by a machine called ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, which is a very testing experience for the healthcare providers as well as for the patients. And then this virus, after reaching the lungs, as you all know, starts the cytokine storm. So many things have been tried as antiviral, remdesivir, and so many is being used. They are being used. But one question about this tocilizumab, which is immunosuppressive. The immunosuppression is so dangerous. It may cure the immunocytokine storm, but it invites the secondary infection in other organs, leading to organ failure or so forth. So this cutting-edge medical advancement has to be used very cautiously. But it is for the advanced stage of the disease. As of now, our aim is to prevent the chain of transmission, prevent the infection being spread from one person to other. In spite of all our efforts, infection may come from anywhere. Previously it was told, no, it is not blood-borne. Now they are called, it is being borne by the blood. Naturally, I question, if it's by droplet infection, it must be blown by the air. So now they have introduced also this thing, that a droplet may be moved to a distance of even 6 feet. So you have to take care of that. Self-protection is the best protection for one and for all. Well, till then, I think I can ask for now this 10% only. I can make some questions from the floor or from anybody, and then again we can discuss other things. As the questions put, we can take our discussion to that level. Please. Anyone? Hello?
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Pompa Odhikari, please, you are on the presentation mode. Please put it off. Pompa Odhikari, you just put it off. Sir, I wanted to ask you one question. What about the herd immunity? You have told about this virus and all those things. How this and the vaccines you have told about. But it is from your discussion I came to know that it is very difficult because there are several strains of this thing. But one thing I wanted to ask, listen something about the herd immunity, what is possible within the population. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome. Very pertinent and pragmatic questions from the beginning of the viral infection of any disease, let alone of COVID. Herd immunity, HERD, so many jokes have been coming out. But herd immunity is the basis of any immunological process. This herd immunity is being developed globally. But our target should be, before a herd immunity can be achieved, an effective herd immunity can be achieved in our society, minimum damage to the public life is done. Herd immunity is achieved through exposure of the virus. As there are 11 strains so far detected, herd immunity of one strain or herd immunity of multiple strains of the virus will give protection to those particular strains of the virus. But before herd immunity or to attain the herd immunity, we will be cautious that we should not unnecessarily expose ourselves to the infecting agent. We were not aware of our immunity powers or immunity account, immunity balance of the individual body. We never know. I take this opportunity, notwithstanding the good effect of herd immunity, the persons who are overweight, obese, severely obese, whose blood sugar is more than 250 at any one point of time or in multiple occasions, those who are severely hypertensive, and those who are suffering from other malignancy or already some lung pathology, they are more prone to get the infection. They cannot develop a herd immunity. But herd immunity for the mass, for the population, is a welcome step. You have probably seen many of the persons are not using the mask even today, and they are not being subject to the treatment, or they are not being diagnosed laboratory or clinically as suffering from the patient symptoms. So probably they are getting the herd immunity. The persons who are RT-PCR positive or without having any symptom are of many kinds. They may have developed herd immunity, or the virus strain is of less virulence. The antibody level has been shot up in their antibody against this coronavirus has been adequate in their blood, so they are not developing any symptom. One concept previously was that asymptomatic positives are the most dangerous. The concept has been changing. I am corona positive. Doesn't be spreading the disease, because number one, the virus strain is of less virulence, so it will not spread that disease-causing virus. Number one. Number two, I have developed enough of antibody without my knowledge, so it can combat the viral infection. Number three, and most important, is that the quantum of the inoculum, I meant to say, the virus particles, the amount, quantity, is not in weight and in numbers. The quantity, the numbers of virus entering and subsequently developing into the multiple of viri in the body is most important. If less number of virus are being introduced serially or by exposing to the community, that is good. But you never measure all those factors. It is not quantifiable very easily. So the less number of virus it enters gradually, and with pace of time, herd immunity is going to be there, as it has been observed in many of the countries. Before that, herd immunity is a natural process. We can control them, the natural process. Before exposing many of the persons to the sudden outburst of the infection, then we are going to lose many lives, important lives, precious lives, and burden the healthcare delivery system unnecessarily. That's why the importance of self-protection, lockdown, self-quarantine, home isolation, so on and so forth. The gym and the swimming pool, most important is swimming pool. Why? The swimming pool, if more than one person quite naturally they swim on there, if any person is having that infection, I shouldn't say he is a patient, any person is swimming with positive RT-PCR, whether laboratory proved or not, he is a chance of spreading the infective agent through the co-swimmers. That's why initially and till now, I think August, September will also go by for banning of using swimming pool or gym where there is quick exposure of multiple persons from a single infecting person. But herd immunity is required without jeopardizing the normal system. Herd immunity will be acquired by those persons who are genetically endowed, who are immunologically more powerful, whose virus entry is of less virulence, whose virus entry is in less than sub-pathological number. Okay. Next question. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Sir,
Yeah.
Sir, one more thing I wanted to say is apart from these political issues and all those things, because from every this media people, because of this media people, we came to know that different types of views that government has put the people in the lockdown, so there is less possibility of this because the young generations are confined at home, the school people, school and college students. So mostly they are the people, the herd immunity is possible to achieve through them. So that lockdown, so these people are, this media people, I'm telling you, they are telling about this lockdown may not be that much effective. On the contrary, if there it is that destroying the economy, and I'm not talking about all those things, but only thing, what about the these issues, that herd immunity and this lockdown? Yes, yes.
Excellent
Sir,
question.
you mean to say that lockdown is better? Okay.
Excellent question. It's a debatable issue, very sensitive issue as well. We should not enter into any political discussion of this, number one. Number two, as some of our senior colleagues, I should not mention his name, probably you know, I came from media only. Senior colleagues from my own college now in SPM School of Tropical Medicine. Initially, some 3 months ago, he said, we do not know anything in details of this disease, the progression, the pathophysiology, the treatment, so on and so forth. Naturally, media cannot also know that. It's all a piecemeal effort on the humankind to know the disease process, the viral characters, the epidemiology, and etc., etc., etc. Lockdown vis-a-vis herd immunity. I probably give him some hints on that. Generating herd immunity or aiming to generate a good quantity and herd immunity, it is a time-consuming process. You cannot overnight attain a herd immunity in a very short span of time. If you want to do that by lifting one of the processes like lockdown, it will unnecessarily, unpreparedly expose the persons, the young, the productive, economically and otherwise population of any country, let alone in our state or in our country, to the unnecessary risk of hazard of contaminating the infection. And this infection, the fever, the respiratory distress, which is the most alarming and frightening symptom, and also the loss of taste, smell, loose motion, so on and so forth, the ultimate stage organ failure, it will put huge burden on the state. Not only that, it will put the challenge of providing healthcare to the persons who are symptomatic. You cannot deny treatment to anybody under the sun. So lockdown is for basically buying time, showing it to give them treatment, buying time, prepare your staff, prepare your infrastructure, so that as you cannot prevent the infection being spread with the speed of time, but we can spread the rapid spread, we can prevent the rapid spread of infection in the community. As I've already said, lockdown, gradual lockdown and unlockdown, these are all phases. It has to be planned very judiciously, and that everything is not sacrosanct, because lockdown was there previously 100 years back also. Christmas was used 100 years back also. All those gargles, saline water, etc., was used 100 years also. But we are learning every day. So lockdown, as this disease is not that dangerous as far as case fatality rate is concerned. Mortality rate is around 2 to 3. In sector, it is going up to 10% at most. Many more diseases. In Siliguri, there was Nipah virus. The case rate was 74%, but the spread was not that huge. It was never a pandemic, not even an epidemic. But this thing, it has become a pandemic globally. So you cannot unnecessarily persons, particularly the school-going children, the college-going children, who will be the main deserver of herd immunity, as you have quite justifiably said. But we should not sacrifice them for the sake of developing herd immunity. Herd immunity is going to come. They are outgoing members. They are going out for income generation, for shopping, day-to-day. Or any aspects. They are going to bring those infections to the home. You cannot prevent that. It is not even preventable. No. They will be getting that infection. Persons in a home setting who have not gone out, they also contact the disease. So by this way, the disease will spread, and by this way, at the same time, the herd immunity will be developed. But from the day one, if you expose the persons, all the young generation or older generation or whoever it might be, in large numbers, to a large number of pool, because one person can spread the disease to 100 persons. Exponential growth, as they say it. So it is not required. It will automatically, herd immunity can automatically happen. I know people are suffering from lockdown. I have to go out every day in this lockdown process. Today also I have to go out to, as Professor Roy and you all know, to have that telemedicine duty. So that will be there. Notwithstanding the lockdown, there will be problems for the people. But lifting the lockdown abruptly, suddenly, without preparing yourself to combat the greater menace in case of disease is being affected, you cannot do that. So you have to prepare yourself and your infrastructure in case of, that is preparedness. The preparedness, that is very, very important. I must, this is for my recap. Epidemiological triad, lockdown is a fallout of epidemiological triad. Should I discuss that epidemiological triad here? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir, it's audible, sir.
Should I discuss the epidemiological triad?
No, sir, it is clear from your discussion. We I think everybody is clear. So rest of your portions I can't say. But this epidemiological triad and all those things, I think everybody has got it. Okay, sir?
This is one process, that is the lockdown. The other process are giving effective treatment and vaccination, which is yet to come. People are spreading contradictory reports, and effective treatment is also a thing. And more importantly, second infection, second exposure, or the secondary infections are also there. That is very important. Today, unless I've got plenty of antibody in my body, I've got a second chance of second exposure of infection. And if I got antibody of against one variety, one strain of the virus, I may be infected again by a second variety of virus, a second strain of virus. That is also important. And so being positive for the second time or third time, one should not be very much, one should very much afraid of that, but we have to be cautious. So herd immunity is against not only one strain of virus, but may be required for multiple variety of virus. Before that herd immunity is not going to work for us. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, sir. I
you,
want to
sir, for
request
giving
you about something. Can you elaborate the role of faith-based organization in controlling the COVID-19 situation? It was started in Mumbai, initiated by the Mumbai government, but what is the possibility to initiate it in West Bengal?
Yes. This is a government policy, departmental policy. Faith-based organization role in combating the viral menace. Faith-based means you can spread a faith very quickly amongst other people. The opinion builders, the leaders in the faith organization, if they have got very sound concept of that this is how it is spread and how it can be contained, and they message, and only spreading them cannot bring the 100% desired goal. It has to be practiced vigorously daily. Once the virus gets entry into any organization, any congregation, it spreads rapidly. Then whatever belief or faith you have spread, go astray. So what is required? Faith-based organization has got a role over there. The department formally is yet to come up because it is being organized in a piecemeal organization by requesting, but in a formalized way, I mean to say, by issuing government order. There are so many ifs and buts over here, but faith-based organization definitely have got a role in containment of the disease in the community. That much I can say. If the department comes up with a definite faith-based organization-based policy, will be coming to know. But it has got a role, definitely, yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for this explanation.
So I am going to tell you about the investigations and management protocol for COVID-19 as per ICMR guidelines by Government of West Bengal Department of Health and Family Welfare. So investigations for mild cases. First is complete hemogram. The common abnormalities are leukopenia with lymphocytopenia. Second is LFT. There may be raised transaminases, maybe hyperbilirubinemia. Third is chest X-ray PAView. The common findings are already discussed in signs and symptoms. Fourth is serum creatinine. It may be raised in different times of the disease condition. Next is ECG. To look for STD changes suggestive of myocarditis changes, and to look for QTc prolongation. Hydroxychloroquine is to be administered cautiously if QT curve is more than 450 microseconds, and it is to be avoided if it is more than 500 microseconds. Sixth is ABG, to be done moderately or severely ill patients, and calculations of PaO2 and FiO2 ratio to find out the level of ARDS as described later. Next is nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs for RT-PCR is not required to be repeated. It may be done only if patient is admitted as a suspect or not yet tested before admission. Moderate cases investigations are all the routine investigations recommended for mild cases have to be sent. Additional investigations are for moderate case. Blood culture or urine culture for diabetic patient, fasting and postprandial sugar, serum ferritin, TROP-T test or quantitative troponins if it is suggestive, procalcitonin level to rule out the secondary infection, CRP, LDH, D-dimer or PTINR or APTT or fibrinogen or platelets to identify the hematological disorders, nasopharyngeal swab for H1N1, CT scan chest non-contrast and USG chest. Suggestive of ARDS. Mild ARDS, PaO2 and FiO2 ratio if it is more than 200 to less than or equal to 300 mmHg with PEEP or CPAP more than 5 cm water or non-ventilated. Moderate ARDS, PaO2 and FiO2 ratio if it is more than 100 to less than or equal to 200 mmHg with PEEP more than or equal to 5 cm water or non-ventilated. Severe ARDS if PaO2 and FiO2 ratio is less than or equal to 100 mmHg with PEEP more than or equal to 5 cm water or non-ventilated. When PaO2 is not available, then SpO2 and FiO2 ratio if it is less than or equal to 315 mmHg suggests ARDS including non-ventilated patients. Treatment of mild cases. Symptomatic treatment. First is rest, paracetamol if there is fever, antitussive if cough is there, ORS for diarrhea, zinc supplementation are required, meter dose inhaler for mild breathlessness, plenty of fluids, and of course nutritious diet. Specific treatment for cases in high risk group. Tablet hydroxychloroquine 400 mg BD on day 1 followed by 400 mg OD for next 4 days as per the protocol. High risk group who are there: patients with age more than 60 years, patients with chronic lung disease, chronic liver disease, chronic kidney disease, with hypertension or cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, diabetes, HIV, cancer, or the patient is on immunosuppressive drugs. When to refer to higher facility? If the following signs symptoms one or more are present, then patient is to be referred. SpO2 is if it is less than 95% at room air, if there is confusion or drowsiness. SBP if it is less than 90 mmHg, DBP is less than 60 mmHg. X-ray chest PAView if it shows bilateral infiltration or unilateral infiltration or ground glass opacity, deranged liver or kidney function. Home isolation of very mild pre-symptomatic cases. There are some eligibility criteria. Very mild symptomatic cases and pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic laboratory confirmed cases are clinically assigned by the treating medical officer can opt for home isolation. Adequate facilities are required at their residence for self-isolation and also for the quarantine of family contacts. Availability at their residence to provide care on 24/7 basis. Hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis as per the protocol and prescribed by the physician. Communication link there should be communication link between the caregiver and the hospital members. Arogya Setu app from government app. Arogya Setu app from government website. monitoring health, regular information to the district surveillance officer, self-isolation as per guidelines, and there are guidelines available for home quarantine persons at the government website. When to seek medical attention during home isolation? If there is difficulty in breathing, if there is persistent pain or pressure in the chest, mental confusion or inability to arouse, developing bluish discolorations of lips or face, or as has been advised by the treating medical officer. Management of moderate or severe cases, same parameters like mild cases, and there are some salient points in management. There should be oxygen therapy if there is respiratory problem, and of course initial fluid management should be there. Specific drug therapy, it is the same as mild case, that is hydroxychloroquine as per the protocol. Contraindications for hydroxychloroquine, it should not be given if the patient have for the children below 12 years. If QT curve in ECG it's more than 500 microseconds, if there is retinal pathology, if there is drug interactions, myasthenia gravis, porphyria, epilepsy. In progressive worsening of conditions, there should be tocilizumab tocilizumab injection. It may be considered in moderate and severe or severe cases. If IL-6 is more than 5 times of the upper limit of the normal, recommended fast dose is 400 mg, that is 4 to 8 mg per kg in 100 ml NS over 1 hour. For patients with poor initial efficacy, an additional 400 mg can be repeated after 12 hours. Maximum number of administrations is 2 times, and maximum single dose is 800 microgram, microgram, and not recommended in patients with active hepatic disease or hepatic impairment with baseline ALT or AST more than 1.5 times of ELN, that is upper limit of normal. Therapeutic plasma exchange may be considered in moderate and severe cases if there is progressive worsening of conditions. Anticoagulations, the lower molecular weight heparin can be given, that is enoxaparin 1 mg per kg per day. In moderate subcutaneously, in moderate to severe patients with marked elevations of D-dimer level, P-time and APTT. Glucocorticoids for patients with progressive deterioration of oxygenation, indicators, imaging and excessive activation of body's inflammatory response. Glucocorticoids can be used for a short period of time of 3 to 5 days. Dose not to be exceed the equivalent of methylprednisolone 1 to 2 mg per kg per day. Empiric antimicrobials. To add antimicrobials to all patients as early as possible, preferably within the first hour. Broad spectrum third generation cephalosporin, piperacillin, tazobactam, carbapenem with or without aminoglycosides may be selected. Azithromycin may be added to cover atypical organisms. Drugs to cover all suspected bacteria and influenza. Try to send blood cultures before starting the antimicrobials, not to delay antimicrobials waiting to send cultures. De-escalate or stop based on the microbiology results or clinical judgment or procalcitonin. Continuation of chronic medications if the patient is on ACE inhibitor, if there is on statins or is insulin or any immunomodulators, that all the drugs can be continued when the COVID treatment is going on. Monitoring, there's some parameters have to be monitored. Monitoring of vital signs, SpO2 or PO2 at regular intervals. Check whether tolerating oxygen therapy, not to delay intubation if worsening of condition. Short trial of high flow nasal cannula, that is HFNC, in selected patients under close monitoring. If HFNC is not available, then to consider non-invasive positive pressure ventilation or NIPPV for the selected patients. But we should be very careful about the leaks and all the contraindications. But full face mask or helmet interface may be preferred. Airborne precautions must be there during this therapy, and MDI with spacer may be preferred. CBC, LFT, RFT, portable chest X-ray, ECG, lactate and procalcitonin every day. The parameters should be checked. ABG should be done 6 hourly. D-dimer, LDH, ferritin or on admission and alternate days should be sent. Early detection of myocardial involvement and other investigations as per the conditions. Aerosol generating procedures, there should intubation, extubation, use of TPs or any open circuit, HFNC or non-invasive positive pressure ventilation, bag masking, open suctioning, bronchoscopy, tracheostomy, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, nebulization as per the conditions it should be carried out. Early self-proning in awake, non-intubated patients. It is one of the common measures, that is to improve the respiratory status of the patient. Any COVID-19 patients with respiratory embarrassment severe enough to be admitted to the hospital may be considered for rotation and early self-proning. Care must be taken not to disrupt the flow of oxygen during patient rotation. Typical protocols include 30 to 120 minutes in prone position, followed by 30 to 120 minutes in left lateral decubitus, right lateral decubitus, and upright sitting position. If the patient have any comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, any cardiac problem, anemia, so according to that, the patient should be managed. Management in critical care unit. There are some criteria for critical care admission. If the patient requires mechanical ventilation, hypotension requiring the vasopressor support, worsening of mental status, or multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, the patient should be shifted to CCU. When to intubate, features of respiratory fatigue if there is they are present with increased work of breathing and worsening respiratory problem, respiratory parameters indicating respiratory failure, hemodynamic instability, altered sensorium with a threatened airway. COVID-19 and acute respiratory failure. It should be managed by invasive mechanical ventilation. I will describe it later. COVID-19 and shock, there should be hemodynamic support, fluid therapy, vasoactive agents. COVID-19 and if there is renal failure, then renal replacement therapies are required. If there is venous thromboembolism, then prophylaxis are required, and if there is cardiac arrest, then cardiopulmonary resuscitation is required. COVID-19 and other issues for intensive care setup, there should be enteral nutrition, glycemic control, prevention of hospital-acquired infections, that is ventilator-associated pneumonia or CRBSI or UTI. Appropriate cultures to be sent, care for the all invasive lines and change as per the need. Early physical therapy, stress ulcer prophylaxis, PPI or H2 blocker, and protocolized light sedation. Pressure ulcer prevention by 2-hourly turning, deep brain thrombosis prophylaxis, protocolized liberation from ventilation. Caution about the premature extubation, that is especially for the without facilitative HFNC or NIPPP or subsequent reintubation. Not to use glucocorticoid routinely, use point of care. And ultrasound is required as much as possible to avoid the transfer when the patient is required that one. COVID-19 and acute respiratory failure, invasive mechanical ventilation, so all the ventilator managements are required, and some rescue therapies are to be implemented, that is prone ventilation, recruitment maneuvers considered in PEEP responsive patients, neuromuscular blockers, pulmonary vasodilators, and ECMO, that is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Requirements for safe prone positioning in ARDS. Most preferred rescue therapy, pre-oxygenate for patient with FiO2 1. Consider in PaO2 and FiO2 ratio less than 150 with a FiO2 more than or equal to 0.6 and PEEP more than or equal to 5, or PaO2 and FiO2 ratio if it is less than 100, less than or equal to 100 with a PaO2 less than or equal to 60 despite optimization of ventilator settings on FiO2 of 1. Consider early proning within first 36 hours, 12 to 16 hours per day. Proning is required, and secure the endotracheal tube and arterial and all the central venous catheters and all other linings. Always check for contraindications and complications. The patient will undergo detailed clinical history including comorbid conditions, measurement of vital signs, oxygen saturation, and radiological examination of chest X-ray, complete blood count, and other investigation as per the indication. Antibiotics should not be prescribed routinely unless there is clinical suspicion of a bacterial infection. So these are all about the management of, this is an overview only about the management of COVID-19. So these are all about my part. So thank you all.
So thank you, Momita. Momita has described in detail about the medical management of COVID-19 infection. Though the time is limited, she has mentioned detail about the drug. As the targeted drug treatment is not available, drug treatment is mainly symptomatic. She has mentioned about the supplemental oxygen. She has mentioned very nicely about the awake proning. Awake proning is the new terminology for us. Previously, we know that whenever the patients require more oxygen, we have to put the patient on on upright position. But in connection with the COVID-19, it is said that whenever there is requirement of the supplemental oxygen, patient needs to keep in a awake proning position, which will increase the oxygen saturation rate. Now, for mild cases without hypoxia or without pneumonia, it is saying that patients should be considered that enrollment in clinical trial. Along with the treatment, patients should be monitored regularly, and there is a system of monitoring which is known as NEWS 2. That is the National Early Warning System version 2. Patients should be monitored for 7 warning signs to elicit whether the condition is progressing to the ARDS or not. It's a simple method of observing the patient, monitoring the patient. We have to observe 7 physiological parameters that are respiratory rate, level of consciousness or new confusion, temperature, and inspired oxygen, and how we can calculate the degree of the that is the monitoring system that is available on the online of the government website. Okay, thank you, Momita. Now I am requesting Anuradha Mukherjee to take the chair of moderator for the next session. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am, for moderating and guiding the speakers in the previous session. Now I would request Madam, the next moderator, Madam Anuradha Mukherjee, to please continue the session. Thank
Excuse
you.
Excuse me. Can you hear me all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So far my memory allows me, is there any topic on VTM and collection of samples here in today's webinar? I've forgotten that time.
No,
VTM,
sir.
viral
No, sir.
transport medium. I've got the samples with me right now. I've collected these things. If you allow me 2 minutes time, I can show this.
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure,
can it be shown? I can't see it. This VTM test tube, can you find it in my hand?
Yes, sir. We can see it.
Yes, can you see it? Can you all see
Yes,
it?
sir.
This is this is the viral transport medium. It contains 3 milliliter of medium for the culture of culture and RT-PCR of coronavirus, or for that matter any virus. This is the medium, and this is the tube, the medium. It contains the saline as well as serum. The color is indicative of that. Can you have a clear look of that?
Yes, sir.
So after collecting the samples from the oropharynx or nasopharynx, the swab stick has to be put into this, and then after completing the paraphernalia, completing the patient details format, etc., maintaining the cold chain box, the earliest possible time it has to reach the center, the lab, where it can be tasted. I can show you the 2 tubes over here. One is a little bit malleable and longer than this is the nasal one, and the other is the throat swab stick. Can you see this properly?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Yeah, this is I'm sorry to interrupt you, but even then I think it is very much required. It is very close to my heart, because these are the practical things. This is the stick for oral swab, oropharyngeal swab, and this is the swab stick for nasopharynx. It is malleable. It can be broken into 2 pieces after taking out the swab from the nasopharynx, then put into the VTM tube, and then transported. So classically, nasopharynx has to be approached, through the either of the 2 nostrils, which is very clear. It has to be taken care of that thing by asking the patient, donning the PPE by the collectors of the samples, and also this throat swab, because the number of swab stick, 2 in number for each patient, the chances of getting the virus in the RT-PCR mode is more. Even if it is for the antigen or antibody, the same stick is used. Usually the nasopharyngeal swab stick, because the chances of getting the presence of infection is more with that. Question, do you have any idea of the group collection of the samples and the group testing, community testing for community? Do you have any idea, anybody?
Sir, please you repeat. We have got some idea, little bit of that community at a time. 5 swabs will be taken. And
Yeah. That's it. That's my question. Yes, very good, ma'am. As you are in the knowledge of this, how these 5 samples are being collected? How? Any idea? Actually,
sir, please
this tube is meant for 3 ml tube is meant for at most two swab sticks. So for 5 persons at a time, you have to take this 5 VTM tube and 5 into 2, 10 swab sticks for 5 persons to be tested. Then this 3 into 5, 15 ml of samples is being, the whole thing is transported to the lab. And then the whole sample of 15 milliliter of transport medium is being subjected to RT-PCR technology. And if that sample, 15 milliliter sample comes positive, then individually we have to test the individual samples to rule out who is positive, who is not. So this is, I think, is one of the very important communication at the ground level, how it can be done, what thing is to be taken care of, the preventive precaution measures, and this transport media, how it is being a little bit prepared, that can be available anywhere in the website. Anyway, but I think this tube is very, very handy. This swab stick, how it can be introduced. In case of need, anybody should be put into the duty of collecting the samples. But before collecting the samples, all the healthcare provider and collectors should be cautious enough to take care of himself and his immediate. Sir, I'm putting this during my scheduled time of 12 to 12:30. Now it is 5 minutes to 1. So I thank you all again for giving me this opportunity, because this is very close to my heart, and I must share these things with anybody, particularly with the professors and the MSc students who are at the forefront of the healthcare provision at the ground level in the hospitals. Thank you very much. I owe many things to you all. Thank you very much. Excellent presentations of all the participants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you once again for your active participation. We really have we are মানে আমরা খুব কৃতজ্ঞ আপনার প্রতি, আপনি যে আজকে এত সুন্দর
I'm also grateful to you. Okay.
ভালো লাগছে।
Okay, thank you.
ঠিক আছে।
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us so much information regarding COVID-19 and letting us gain adequate knowledge and also being active participation in the webinar. So without further delay, I would like to request Anuradha ma'am to continue the session. Over to you, ma'am.
So now from this above discussion, we came to know from the from history to medical management of COVID-19 and the strategy for management of government strategy for management of COVID-19, and also the how to take the samples and how to send it to the lab. We also came to know. But most important is the overall care. Nursing care is very important and useful for us, as because we are nurse, for the improvement on all type of disease as also the COVID-19. Because nursing care, it touches the all aspect of it. The physical aspect, but also the other aspect. So now the Madhurima Kumar will present the nursing management of COVID-19. Madhurima, please. Madhurima.
Ma'am, just a minute. So is the slide visible to all? Is the slide visible?
No.
It's not.
No, not yet.
No.
Now we can see.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Yes, it is coming. It is coming, Madhurima. Yes, sir.
Please everyone pin Madhurima to watch the slides.
Okay.
Madhurima, your presentation is off. No slides are there. You
Ma'am,
just,
actually, excuse me, I can see anything. Madhurima. Okay.
I can't see Madhurima.
I can't see.
Okay, now?
No,
No,
not
no.
yet.
Visible?
No.
No.
Stop
Please
that
start
presentation and start again.
Please stop and start. Yes.
It's coming.
Yes.
Yes.
Coming. Yes.
Now we can see. Yes. Full screen.
Madhurima.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So now I'm going to discuss about nursing management of patients with COVID infection. With the outbreak of the pandemic, we nurses have stepped up and beyond. During the difficult time, nurses are tirelessly working in the forefront battling COVID-19. Needless to say how important nursing management for a COVID patient is. So in order to do that, all the nurses as well as healthcare team must receive the highest level of protection to provide care for the individuals and communities in which they serve. It is essential to develop and educate all staff on preparedness plans that provide infection control procedures and protocols used within the healthcare facility to prevent transmission. So there are various policies and protocols and also important points that we have to keep in mind as a nurse. So before going into the actual nursing management process, let's go through that. So the first point includes develop inpatient, ambulatory and home care policies and procedures that are in line with current CDC guidelines for COVID-19. Provide training to all personnel on screening and isolation procedures. Provide updated training and guidelines on the use of personal protective equipments commonly known as PPE, including masks, gloves, cap, gowns, shoe covers, etc. Display clear signage with instructions for access and use of PPE. Next, ensure consistent use of proper hand hygiene standard precautions and contact precautions, which are very important, along with the proper use of N95 mask, also other PPEs. Next, clearly display signage for patients listing symptoms and instructions to wear a face mask before entering the healthcare facility if symptoms are present. Identify in advance airborne infection isolation rooms or negative pressure rooms for quarantining and screening. Develop a telephone triage protocol for patients to access from home to minimize community-based transmission. Have availability for immediate notification of patient under investigation. The infection control staff at your facility and local and state health department. Now the question arises that what types of patients we generally get. Usually we get two types of patients. So first is most people who are symptomatically infected with the coronavirus will experience a mild to moderate respiratory illness and recover without requiring special treatment. So these people come under type 1. And next, older people and those with underlying medical comorbidities like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, chronic respiratory diseases, or cancer are more likely to develop serious illness, and these patients are included under type 2. Next, moving forward to the nursing management process. We all know that this is a cyclic process, starting from assessment of the client, then formulating nursing diagnosis based on needs, then planning the required actions, implementation of the actions, and lastly, evaluation of the actions. So, assessment is very important. First and foremost, assessment is very important in providing proper care to any client. Careful assessment is essential in the evaluation and management of patients who may have COVID-19, and particularly in those with fever, acute respiratory illness, and other symptoms of infection. So we have to differentiate whether it's COVID-19 or any common cold or flu, and we can do that by assessing the client properly. Nursing assessment of these patients should include both history taking and physical examination. So in the history collection, we have to collect history on any visit to foreign countries, states or cities with active COVID-19 cases, that is known as to be geographic hotspots worldwide, by the patient himself or any family member in recent past. Second, we also have to know whether the patient had any contact with a person infected with coronavirus or not. Then physical examination. In physical examination, we have to look for all the typical signs and symptoms of COVID infection, like fatigue for last few days, then mild or high-grade fever, dry cough and sore throat, along with new loss of smell, which is known as to be anosmia, or loss of taste, agvasia, then body ache and pain, myalgia, chest congestion, runny nose, GI upset, and frequent diarrhea. Then we have to assess respiration and cardiovascular status of the patients, which are very important. Assess respiratory rate, breathing pattern, bilateral air entry, any breathing difficulty, and saturation level of the client. Assess heart rate, auscultate heart sound, blood pressure, and checking of capillary refill time. Then monitoring body temperature is very essential. Assessment of the pain level by using visual analog scale, since the patient may show symptoms of body ache. Then assess the level of anxiety in the patient. Assessment for complications. Then pneumonia, we have to assess for pneumonia in both the lungs. Organ failure in several organs as early as possible. Not every patient with COVID-19 experiences all of these symptoms. In fact, a study published on June 23, 2020 found that 78% of COVID-19 patients had a fever, 57 reported to have a cough, 31% said they had suffered fatigue. Interestingly, 25% had lost their sense of smell, and only 23% lost their sense of taste. So evidently it is showing that all the symptoms, these are not generalized. We cannot generalize the symptoms. It can vary from one patient to the other. So careful assessment is very much needed. Now, moving forward to the nursing diagnosis based on the assessment that we did before. So, the first diagnosis based on the assessment is ineffective breathing pattern related to bronchospasm and musculoskeletal fatigue secondary to novel coronavirus infection, as evidenced by increased respiratory rate, cough and saturation less than 90%. Our goal is to reduce respiratory distress and maintain oxygen saturation above 94%. So the interventions that we have to do include assessment of vital signs. After assessment of vital signs, we have to provide propped up position or prone position to the patient, clear the airway if needed, administer humidified oxygen at the rate prescribed, and continuously monitor saturation level of the client. Let the patient drink some fluid if he can. Next, administer antitussive syrup as prescribed to relieve cough. Now, if the patient is on mechanical ventilator, elevate the head of the patient and clear the airway by suctioning the respiratory secretions using strict aseptic techniques. Continuously monitor all the vital signs along with saturation. Reassess the respiratory status, that is respiratory rate, breathing pattern, bilateral air entry, and use of accessory breathing muscles. So next, moving forward to the diagnosis number 2, which is altered body temperature related to inflammatory process as evidenced by increased body temperature. Our goal is to maintain normal body temperature and provide comfort to the patient as much as possible. Interventions include assess the patient's body temperature, let the patient remove extra clothing, do tepid sponging, administration of the antipyretic drug as per prescription, then reassessing patient's body temperature frequently and documenting properly. Now, coming to the diagnosis number 3. Acute body ache related to inflammatory process as evidenced by patient's verbal response. Our goal is to reduce body ache and make the patient comfortable as much as possible. The interventions for that are assessment of the pain level of the patient by using numerical scale, Bohm-Baker scale. We can use either of them. Provide comfortable position and comfort devices according to the comfort level of the patient. Then assist the patient in changing position in every 2 hourly. Administration of analgesics if required as prescribed, and reassess the pain level very importantly. Then provide diversion therapy if possible, like music. So these are the 3 nursing diagnoses, their goals and interventions according to the goal. Now the remaining nursing diagnosis and the rest of the portion will be continued by Shoma Panigrahi. Thank you so much.
Intake is possible. Thank you, Madhurima, for handing over the session to me and letting me to present my topic over here. The next diagnosis is regarding altered nutritional status less than body requirement related to lack of exogenous nutrient and increased metabolic demand as evidenced by client's appearance and feeling of weakness as reported by the client. The goal is to improve nutritional status of the client. For that, the care provider has to monitor weight and body mass index of the client, monitor calorie intake as per body requirement, maintain intake output chart, ask the client for his or her food preferences if oral intake is possible. Accordingly, protein-rich diet should be provided with vitamin and mineral supplements along with plenty of water, fruit juices, etc. Maintain electrolyte balance through supplementation of micronutrients. Sips of warm water, soups, cup of tea can be provided for a change of taste. If the client is on nasogastric tube feed, then after assessing the position of the nasogastric tube, administer feed every 2 hourly or as prescribed by the doctor. If the client is on intravenous fluids, then administer intravenous fluids as per prescription and monitor blood glucose level and hydration status regularly. Reassess intake and output in every shift and document it. Then the next diagnosis is regarding knowledge deficit related to lack of previous knowledge and exposure as evidenced by frequent questioning. Basically, inadequate knowledge, misconceptions, myth regarding the pandemic crisis resulting in panic, fear and stigma, thrusting a psychological threat to human being. In order to overcome this emotional crisis, planned awareness program is essential through advertisement, advocacy and appropriate aid. Hence, the goal is to improve the knowledge level of the client as well as the family. For that, all the queries of the client to be explained thoroughly and properly according to his or her understanding level. Education to be provided regarding hand hygiene, use of mask in public places and how to discard the used mask and most importantly social distancing. Education on protocol for home isolation and quarantine. Educating the family on treatment protocol of COVID patients at home, especially the sign and symptoms and when to seek medical care. The next diagnosis is anxiety related to threat of biological, psychological and social integrity as evidenced by confused facial expressions, fearfulness and repetitive queries. Not only the patient but the whole family becomes a victim of COVID-19 once one of the family member tested positive. The uncertainty of returning back to previous lifestyle, separation from the near and dear ones or adopting the new normal make them apprehensive. Hence, the goal is to reduce the level of anxiety of the clients. For that, the patient has to make comfortable first and let him or her ventilate their feelings. Assess the support system of the patient and different stress coping methods used by them. Assess the knowledge level of the client regarding the disease condition. Explain them about the disease condition and also the need of using mask and quarantine to prevent the spread of infection. To teach the client regarding different stress coping strategies. To arrange for video call or teleconference with the family members and friends and ensure psycho-supportive environment. Reassess the anxiety level of the client. Next, coming to the most important factor, that is infection. So, the nursing diagnosis is potential for infection related to invasive lines, prolonged hospitalization and low immunity. The goal is to reduce the risk of infection as well as cross-infection. Both the care provider and care seeker are the carrier of infection here. Hence, while providing care, the care provider should wear COVID kit available for healthcare providers. They shouldn't use their mobile phones while on duty hours. They shouldn't be caring for non-COVID patients with the same personal protective equipment on and at the same time. They should handle the respiratory secretions of infected clients carefully. They should maintain strict hand hygiene even if the gloves is on. They should remove the personal protective equipment immediately after providing care to the client once in a shift and perform hand hygiene. Regarding the patients, all invasive lines should be properly taken care of. To provide the client with high protein diet along with zinc and vitamin C supplementations. Medications to be given properly as well as patient to be educated on the importance of intake of medications. Measures like stimulation could be of some relief. Risk of multi-organ failure related to coagulopathy. The goal is to identify the risk of multi-organ failure at the earliest. For that, the necessary interventions are to assess respiratory complications, respiratory rate, auscultate for any abnormal breath sounds like bronchi and assess saturation level in room air as well as, if required, with moist oxygen. Assess for renal complications like decreased urine output and explain to the patient about the need of lab investigations like renal function test. Assess for cardiac complications like monitor heart rate, blood pressure, capillary refill time, productive sputum or pedal edema and weak steady pulse. Explain to the client regarding the need of undergoing investigations like electrocardiograph, echocardiograph if required. There is a need of continuous monitoring of response to the treatment, pain level and effectiveness of interventions, vital signs, blood glucose level, signs and symptoms of dehydration, pneumonia, respiratory status and saturation level, coping status and complications if any. While providing care to the client with COVID-19 who is on mechanical ventilation, there is need to ensure that health workers performing aerosol generating procedures like specimen collecting from upper and lower respiratory tract, they should use personal protective equipment properly. To use adequately ventilated single room while performing aerosol generating procedures with negative pressure rooms with minimum of 12 air changes per hour, at least 160 liters per second per patient if possible. To avoid the presence of unnecessary individuals, that is to avoid the overcrowding in the room. To avoid disconnecting the client from the ventilator in order to prevent loss of positive end expiratory pressure or atelectasis by using inline catheter for airway suctioning and clamping endotracheal tube. To provide prone ventilations for more than 12 hours for patients with severe acute respiratory distress syndrome for both adult and pediatric. To use conservative fluid management strategy for acute respiratory distress syndrome clients. To communicate properly with clients as well as relatives. During research also, the nursing personnel has to participate as a part of multidisciplinary team to coordinate research planning efforts. To assess the clients and families' understanding of follow-up and warning signs and when to seek medical attention. To provide the client written discharge summary including the drugs to be taken after discharge. To teach the patient and his family about proper isolation, hand hygiene, cough etiquettes, etc. Document discharge planning evaluation in client's clinical record. Thank you everyone for their patience listening. Stay home and take care. Thank you.